Okay, welcome to session 2 on biblical chronology. What we're going to look at here is the reigns of the kings of Israel and Judah. If you've spent any time reading through the second part of Samuel, the books of Kings, the books of Chronicles, you'll recognize there's a lot of chronological data in there. So-and-so died in the X number of years of the other king, and he reigned so many years, and he died, and his son reigned in his stead. There's a ton of chronological information in there. And we're going to look at a little part of that, just as an example of the whole. The first thing I want to demonstrate to you is how jumbled these numbers look when you approach them without knowledge of how the ancient Near East calendar system worked, and then how perfectly they fit together once you understand that kind of thing. So let's jump right in. I'm going to begin with the reign of Shalmaneser III. He's a Mesopotamian and Assyrian king, and we have discovered two inscriptions that belonged to him, the Kirkstela and the black obelisk, and you can see those pictured here. The black obelisk comes from his 18th year. That's actually inscribed on the obelisk itself. And this very interesting chunk of stone, it's about 6 feet tall. It pictures the Judean king Jehu on it, bowing down to Shalmaneser. And we know that this was in the year 841 BC. We can calculate that based on a whole variety of things. There's really no question, though, that that's the correct year for this obelisk. The Kirkstela is another inscription put up by Shalmaneser III, and in it he describes the Battle of Karkar. And one of his opponents was Ahab, king of Israel. This happened in his 6th year, and so we can calculate from that it would have been 853 BC. So a 12-year span between the Kirkstela, the yellow one, brown one up here, and the black obelisk, the black one. 12-year span. So let's begin adding in some biblical information. According to 2 Kings 10:36, Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria 28 years. Now that verse does not tell us when he became king, but we know it could not have been later than 841, right? Because he paid tribute to Shalmaneser III in 841. So we can't we can't move it forward any later than 841. It has to be at least as early as 841 BC. With me so far? Okay. 2 Kings 3:1. Now Jehoram the son of Ahab became king over Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. Okay, so we'll put his 12-year reign in there based on 2 Kings 3:1. 2 Kings 22:51. Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel and Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. Now you should already see a problem. We can't move Jehu any later than 841 because as king, he paid tribute to Shalmaneser in that year. Jehoram reigned for 12 years. Ahaziah reigned for 2 years. And he's preceded by Ahab, who reigned for 22 years. But Shalmaneser on the Kirk obelisk tells us that I met Ahab in battle in my 6th year in 853 BC. Already we have an issue, don't we? Because according to the biblical text, there are 14 years between Ahab and Jehu, and yet Shalmaneser III tells us there's only 12 years. These things don't line up, right? Right. Yes, that's the correct answer. They don't look like they line up. Let's add in a little more information. This is Ahaziah. 2 Kings 8:25 tells us in the 12th year of Jehoram, that's the king directly above him, Joram the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. Now, here's something I don't believe I have on this slide. If you go back and read in 2 Kings, Jehu, when he became king, he killed Jehoram, his predecessor, the king of Israel in the north. He also turned around and killed Ahaziah, the king of Judah in the south, like within a day or two. So we know that Jehoram and Ahaziah, their deaths occurred at essentially the same time. So we have an alignment in the chronology there. You with me so far? Okay. And Ahaziah only reigned a single year. I do have some of that text. Out of 2 Kings chapter 9, Jehu drew his bow with his full strength and shot Jehoram, that's the king of the north, the king of Israel. Between his arms, the arrow went through his heart. He sank in his chariot. He died. Skipping down to verse 27, when Ahaziah, the king of Judah, saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house, and Jehu pursued him and said, "Shoot him too, in the chariot." So they shot him at the ascent of Gur, which is at Ibleam, but he fled to Megiddo, and he died there. So the king of the north and the king of the south both end their reign at the same time. They are both killed by the same guy, Jehu, or his men, at the same time. So there's a very solid synchronism there, an immovable synchronism, if you will. 2 Kings 11:4 tells us that Ahaziah was followed by Queen Athaliah, and that she reigned for 7 years. Athaliah was followed by Joash. In the 7th year of Jehu, Joash became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. And it provides the name of his mother. So that would be there in the 7th year of Jehu, and that actually fits. So we all breathe a sigh of relief there. Okay, backing up from Ahaziah, 2 Kings 8, verses 16 and 17. Now in the 5th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, being then the king of of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, became king. And he was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. So on the chart here, we have spaced back 8 years for the reign of Jehoram, and yet the text tells us that that was in the 5th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, the king of Israel. You see a conundrum there? We have 8 years of Jehoram plus 1 year of Ahaziah, but that only covers 7 years in the reign of Jehoram. Jehoram only reigned 12 years. Oh, this does get confusing because we have a Jehoram in the north reigning at the same time as a Jehoram in the south. But Jehoram of Israel reigned 12 years, Jehoram of Judah only 8. How then can Jehoram in the south, in Judah, come to the throne in the 5th year of Jehoram of the north? All of these arrows should be vertical to line up, and this one clearly does not. 2 Kings 22:4. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, became king over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. And if you calculate that out, again you'll see we have an offset of 2 years. The years do not line up. I'll let you do the counting on your own if you want. But if you go back, the length of his 25 years, it does not line up with where we would expect it to be in the life of Ahab. Second Kings 9:29. Now in the 11th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah became king over Judah. That fits. If Ahaziah reigned for 1 year, he died at the same time as Jehoram above him, who reigned 12 years, so he came to rule in the 11th year. That works. However, 2 Kings 8:25 tells us that in the 12th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah, the son of Joram, king of Judah, began to reign. Well, which was it? The 11th year or the 12th year? And if it's the 12th year and Jehoram died after his 12th year, then how could Ahaziah even reign for 1 year? Looks like another conflict there. 2 Kings 1:17, so Ahaziah died according to the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. And because he had no son, Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Now wait a minute. We just read earlier in 2 Kings 8:16 that Jehoram of the south became king in the 5th year of Jehoram of the north. And now we have a verse that tells us that Jehoram of the north became king in the 2nd year of Jehoram of the south. How can those both be true? You start to get the feel for why these numbers appear to be problematic. It looks utterly impossible. 2 Kings 3:1, Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. Wait a minute. Jehoshaphat reigned 25. How can Jehoram become king in Jehoshaphat's 18th year and in Jehoram's 2nd year? It looks like a rather major conflict or just a plain corruption of numbers. And here's another one. 1 Kings 22:5, Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel in Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, and he reigned 2 years. How can he reign 2 years, coming to the throne in Jehoshaphat's 17th year, and yet his successor, Jehoram, becomes king in the 18th year? How is there room for a 2-year reign for Ahaziah there? The translators of the Septuagint did not understand these reign numbers either. And how do we know that? Because they tried to fix them. The Septuagint was translated before the time of Christ. I believe it probably began as early as about 250 in Egypt under the Ptolemies. And as they came across these numbers, they did the calculations too, and they figured out these numbers don't work. So let's fix them. And in the end, they made the problem worse by trying to adjust the numbers to fit. because as soon as you adjust them in one place, then they don't fit somewhere else. That's evidence that they didn't understand how these numbers were used. Here's just an example of what they did. 1 Kings 16:29, Ahab, the son of Omri, became king over Israel in the 38th year of Asa, the king of Judah. That's what the Hebrew text tells us. The Septuagint changed that to in the 2nd year of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. Totally reworded it in an attempt to fix the numbers and make them work. Second example, Ahaziah died because he had no son. Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. That's the other Jehoram. And the Septuagint changed that to the beginning of the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. This is not a scribal error where somebody accidentally wrote in the wrong number. This is a purposeful change in the Septuagint in an attempt to fix the reign dates and the numbers here of the Hebrew text. George Smith, gotta love the beard, linguist and a chronologist. He discovered and translated the first known tablet of the Gilgamesh epic. And he was the one that discovered the date of Jehu's tribute payment, 841 BC, as recorded on the black obelisk. He'd uncovered a bunch of stuff and made some real headway chronologically in the Old Testament. But this data, the reign lengths, the numbers of the kings, stumped him. Here's a statement he made. The chronology of the period of the kings of Judah and Israel has formed a fruitful subject of discussion in all subsequent ages. Works have been written on this epoch from the time of the Greek kings of Egypt, that's the Ptolemies, the intertestamental period, until now, and yet we are unable, after the lapse of 2,000 years, to settle the leading dates. The difficulties which stand in the way have led some to throw on one side entirely the chronological question. This result is unfortunate because history cannot be satisfactory without chronology. A really interesting statement there by George Smith. So this is around 1875, not that long ago. 70 years ago, William F. Albright also struggled to make sense out of these. He says, for many years I've occupied myself periodically with the somewhat thankless task of reconstructing the chronology of Judah and Israel between the death of Solomon and the fall of Jerusalem. He made that statement in 1945, and he had come to no conclusion, no satisfactory conclusion. And Albright was a bright man. However, a guy by the name of Edwin Thiele finally solved this issue. And it revolves around the complexity of the ancient calendar systems. He wrote a book called The Mysterious Numbers of the Hebrew Kings, which now pretty much everybody, secular and biblical, agrees has solved this conundrum. 3 issues going on that he put together. One is the existence of co-regencies. That's where you have an overlap in the reign of 2 kings, typically a father-son. These are not always made clear in the text. Sometimes you have to deduce that there is a co-regency. Sometimes it will say it outright, but not always. The second one is the use of accession and non-accession year reckoning. We'll talk about that more in just a second because I realize that's kind of technical language. And the third issue is the use of 2 different calendars that started at different times of the year. He published his work in 1953, and it was subsequently tested and accepted by nearly all biblical chronologists. It has been tweaked in a few places over the years. There were, for example, a couple of co-regencies that he missed. But his main solution has been proven correct and has been widely acknowledged as the true answer to a riddle that eluded scholars for well over 2,000 years. So first of all, co-regencies, and that's two kings reigning at the same time. We have some that are stated outright here in 2 Kings 15. Azariah did what was right in the Lord's sight, just as his father Amaziah had done. High places were not taken away. The people continued sacrificing and burning incense on the high places. The Lord afflicted the king, and he had a serious skin disease until the day of his death. He lived in a separate house, while Jotham, the king's son, was over the household governing the people of the land. That's a co-regency. The old king is still alive, so we're not going to count the end of his reign yet. We don't do that till he dies. But his son is ruling over the land. That's one that's stated. Others are discerned through deduction. An example is Jehoram of Israel and Jehoram of Judah, beginning their reigns in the middle of each other's reigns, which is what we saw on that first set of slides. That only makes sense with a co-regency. We'll look at that in a little more detail here in a moment. Accession years versus non-accession years. Essentially, this is, how do we deal with a partial year reign? In American government, we always have a 4-year reign of a president that begins and ends on the same date. So you can just add the 4-year sections together and you come up with a correct number. Ahaziah's 2-year reign in Israel began in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat and ended in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat. How can that be counted as 2 years? It depends on what you do with partial years. The 12 years between the Battle of Karkar and Shalmaneser's tribute from Jehu only work if both Ahaziah and Jehoram counted partial years in their reign counts. I don't know if you noticed, there's a 12-year slot there that has to cover a 12-year and a 2-year set of reigns. There's an excess of 2 years, and there is a difference. Well, we have two installations of new kings, so the potential of 2 partial years being counted as full years. For the sake of nomenclature here, if one is using an accession year system, the partial year is not counted as year 1. So, if Donald Trump was inaugurated in February to December would not be counted as year 1 in an accession year system. It would be counted as his accession year. And year 1 would be his first full year. In a non-accession system, the partial year is counted as year 1. The first full year is counted as year 2. Which one's right? Neither one is right or wrong. They're just different. But it's important to discern which system is being used if you're going to add up the years correctly. Are they counting partial years as a year of reign, or are they discounting it and only counting the full year? By the way, both of those systems were used by Hebrew scribes at various times. It's not all one or all the other, which makes it even more complicated. Third issue is the calendars. At the top here, you can see the Julian calendar, which is the calendar we use, begins in January. The Nisan calendar Hebrew calendar began in the month of Nisan, which is about March or April, so that would have been the beginning of their year. The Tishri calendar began 6 months later in the fall in the month of Tishri. So when does your year begin? That also makes a difference. And in fact, well, you can see here an event in the middle of the Julian calendar falls in a different place, a different year, depending on whether the Hebrew scribe's using the Nisan or the Tishri calendar. So their counting systems could be off by 6 months, depending on which calendar they were using. And in fact, we know that both were in use at various times, further complicating chronology. Not making it impossible, just complicating it. And so we have to figure out which calendar they were using. Can you imagine if we used 2 different calendars? You're familiar with this a little bit because we have like our New Year is January 1st. The Chinese New Year is not January 1st, right? I don't know what the date is off the top of my head, but it's at least weeks later. And the Hebrew calendar, also at least the religious calendar, is off from ours. We have the school year that begins at a weird time. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and show you the same section of history implementing these 3 aspects of ancient chronology: the accession, non-accession years, the co-regencies, and the 2 different calendars. So I've begun here by showing you the brown line is the kingdom of Israel in the north. At this time, they were using the Nisan calendar, beginning the year in the month of Nisan. And there are no co-regencies in this section. And they're using the non-accession year system. So that means that partial years are counted as full numbers for both Ahaziah and Jehoram. So what looks like, when you just read the text without this knowledge, what looks like 14 years, 2 years for Ahaziah and 12 years for Jehoram, what looks like 14 years is counting partial years and ultimately is only 12, as we would count them on our calendar. So, Jehoram reigned parts of 11 different years, counted as 12. Ahaziah, 2 partial years. Again, we could just count it as 1 from a Julian calendar perspective. And so it is quite possible for Ahab to meet Shalmaneser in battle at Karkar in 853, and for Jehu to pay tribute to him in 841, and to have both the so-called 2-year reign of Ahaziah in there and the 12-year reign of Jehoram. This is the reign of the kings of Judah in the south. We do have 2 co-regencies here during this period. They were using the Tishri calendar, not the Nisan calendar, so everything is offset by 6 months in comparison to the north. And they're using the non-accession year as well. So they are also counting partial years as full years. So let me just run you quickly through some of these numbers again. 2 Kings 12, in the 7th year of Jehu, Joash became king and he reigned 40 years. So we actually didn't have an issue with that earlier on either. right after the reign of Athaliah. Now, in the 5th non-accession year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being then the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, became sole king. So that's a reference not to his beginning of his co-regency, but to the beginning of his sole kingship. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned parts of, because this is a non-accession year system of counting, he reigned parts of 8 years in Jerusalem. First Kings 22:41. Now Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, became sole king over Judah in the accession year system, the 4th year of Ahab, the king of Israel. So again, it's because of a co-regency here, this data works, which if you miss the co-regency, it does not. 2 Kings 9:29. Now in the accession system, 11th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah became king over Judah. So that works both in his 11th year and using the non-accession system, that's in the 12th year of Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel. So it's important to distinguish between these, and some of these we can only figure out deductively. The text does not tell us, okay, now we're switching from an accession system to a non-accession system. We have to be aware that that's a possibility and then deduce it. But once we understand it, it fits perfectly. The numbers are correct. Here we have 2 Kings 1:17. Ahaziah died according to the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. Because he had no son, Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd co-regnal year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat. So here we are not talking about the end, the beginning of his sole reign, like we were in 2 Kings 8:16. Here we are talking about his co-regency with his father Jehoshaphat. 2 Kings 3:1. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the non-accession system, 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. So again, what initially looked to us like a complete non-fit, once we understand the co-regencies and accession system, non-accession system, it fits perfectly. And we can also say, as 1 Kings 22:51 does, Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel and Samaria in the non-accession system, 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 2, we now understand, partial years over Israel. That was complicated, but it works. And given knowledge of those kinds of things, you can see here we were looking at this one little section out of the total reign length of the kings of Judah and Israel. But when we apply that to the entire system, it works perfectly, and we can figure out exact reigns for these guys. It's important to be aware of that information, because otherwise, if you go home and try to calculate this stuff without that data, you can real quickly get confused and maybe even convince yourself that these dates don't work, because it looks superficially like they conflict with each other. It's a fun day in which to live when we know this stuff. When you think that for 2,000 years or longer now. Nobody was able to make sense out of this stuff. It's fascinating to me to think that even in Jesus' day, the scribes and the Pharisees would have been unable to explain what you see here. They at that time did not understand how the numbers worked. Probably just as amazing to me is that the copyists, the scribes that copied out the Hebrew scriptures, did so faithfully for all that time, despite the fact that they didn't understand the numbers that they were copying. The numbers looked like they were problematic, and yet they copied them correctly anyway. And that's the only thing that allows us today to go back and actually calculate everything correctly. If they had tried to fix them, like the copyists who did the Greek Septuagint did, we would not have the actual data to make any sense out of this. But because the Hebrew scribes copied correctly, even though they didn't understand what they were copying, we are now able to fill all of this in. We've applied the right understanding of their calendar systems, and now it all makes sense. I just think that's astounding, and a shout out to the scribes, the Hebrew scribes that did this, that copied faithfully, even though it looked like it was a mess. And that gives me a lot of confidence for the Hebrew text in general. And I will say I tend to give the nod to the Hebrew text when it comes to numbers, as opposed to Samaritan Pentateuch or the Greek Septuagint or those kinds of things, just because they were so faithful in copying these numbers. That's not to say there are no issues in the Hebrew text. Just as an example, we seem to have a bit of missing information for the reign of Saul in 1 Samuel. I don't know anybody that thinks that he only reigned for 2 years. In fact, Paul contradicts that in the New Testament. So there are a couple of places where it seems like that we have a lacuna or something has happened. But generally speaking, I think that the Hebrew text is extremely reliable, especially in light of how these copyists worked. And I think we're about ready to move on to session 3.